Hi, 7th grade. Today we're going to make our walls. This is all going to be about scoring and bending cardboard. Normally we'd be using our nice compressed chipboard at school with a utility knife, but I'm going to assume that these supplies are not available to you. So I'm just going to be using my scissors. We need a ruler, and instead of corrugated cardboard, because I think this would be sturdier to use the corrugated cardboard, and I'll show you in some areas using this, but we probably will get kind of a crisper score, which is sort of like cutting through the cardboard and having a bending line, if we used like a food box. So I'm going to use a cereal box for this. So really all you need is some food boxes, some glue, a straight edge, and scissors. Some scissors. If you have a utility knife or an X-Acto knife and it's okay with the adults in your home, that you're using it and you're doing it under their supervision, that would be okay, but we'll just try to do this with the scissors, I think would be the better thing. Ruler or a straight edge. I've got some cardboard. The corrugated cardboard from shipping boxes is fine. But ideally, the chipboard is great. People don't generally have chipboard around their house, but you can find it in cereal boxes or any kind of food packaging. I think I'm going to use this one because I'm tired of looking at this guy. So I took these cereal and put in one of those keep the cereal fresh containers. It's all like, the cereal is not organic, and then it goes on to talk about how that's really expensive, so it's good that it's not. Clever marketing there. So I'm going to cut this up. Normally we would spend a good amount of time looking at net design and just how something is put together, like a 3D thing, when you flatten it out, what it looks like. And you've done a little bit of that in math, but we'd be spending a lot of time doing that. I'm going to put that off until we're working on our interiors. Right here you actually see what we're going to be doing, and this is called score lines. And score lines are when you cut the surface in half just enough so it makes a really crisp, clean fold. So that's what we're going to want for it going around the side of our building. We're going to figure out how tall we want our walls, and I would say we usually go between 4 and 6 inches if we're back at school. So I think for this particular building, 6 inches might be kind of nice. Oops, my pencil. Alright, so this is 6, and 6. It obviously is going to look a lot better if we were using the chipboard, if we would in school, but we're really going to make do with what we have. Hear that May wind howling. Stupid 2020. Okay. So all we have to do is we go around this. So we might as well, where that edge is, we can kind of start it off there. I'm going to hold it up against it. This is going to be not as exact as it would be nice for it to be. So we're just sort of throwing this together. And at each turn, we're going to make a score line. So what you want to do with a score is you want to make your score on the opposite side that you want it to bend. So if we want this to bend this way, like towards us, we're going to score it on the other side. So it would be right about here. Oh, that's right. Can't use these. If you have one around, we go through a whole safety utility knife demo, and instead of going on the tip, you keep it down here. You always keep your other hand up. Make sure that nothing is in the way, and you watch really what you're doing. Now, because I'm assuming that people don't have access to these at home, we're going to use scissors. We make sure if we did have that tip that it's put in. And again, this is just as, you know, it's pretty sharp, our scissors here. And we're pressing down and we're making a score line, which is a nice, even. You know what I'm going to do? Right here I have this extra. I'm going to even just fold that over for here. Wow. And that's actually kind of perfect that it goes in like that. But we bring it around our building. You can do it on the top of it or on the outside of it. And just make a mark wherever you need to score. Alright, I want this to fold in this way. So we score on the opposite side. So if I wanted to go in this way towards me, I'm going to do the score line over here. If we're using food boxes, this is going to be easier to use with scissors because it's thinner than even the chipboard we use at school. If we use the corrugated, and I'll show you that as well, it is harder to get that crisp edge because of the corrugation within the cardboard, so you're probably better off to use just food boxes. Okay, this is a good time too to make a little indication of if this is the side. I'm going to make a little arrow going up to match with an arrow here, just in case I forget where it's supposed to go. Now it's likely that your walls aren't going to reach around the whole perimeter of your building, and that's where we'll use the rest of it. I just need to, right here, I want this to fold out that way, come out here, so our score is going to be over here. Now at this point, to use the rest and go around this last little bit that I have, I'm seeing that I don't quite have enough. I have enough to get around, but it's not as tall as the other one. So we might have to forfeit some of our height. And that's okay. Again, we're using what we have. We want this one to be 4 inches as well. I'm going to use the straight edge that it already has. So right here we're dealing with the curve. If you're dealing with the curve, you want your scores to go in, you want to measure out your score lines. So let's see, starting about right here. It's probably going to be more helpful using this cereal box so that I don't have those scores that are already in the cardboard. We want like the flattest surface here. So we want to go just about like this. Now we're kind of fortunate. One of the upsides of using such thin cardboard is that, you know, technically we could just glue it like that if we wanted to, but let's actually learn about the scoring parts of it, because it'll make our building and our lives a little bit easier. So we want it to continuously curve this way. And if we want it to bend this way, then we know this is the way we want to bend it on this side, then we're going to score it on this side. And what I'm going to do is take my ruler and at evenly measured increments, I'm going to make score lines. I should probably do it. The more score lines you make, the more of a curve you're going to get. All right. All right. Where'd this one go? There we go. Now, you might think, let's just glue this together. But we're not going to glue it on yet because we have to deal with our surfaces. We have to cut in any doors and windows right now. If we're going to paint it, we need to do that first. Wallpaper, if we're going to do that, we need to put that on now. And then let it all dry before we glue anything on. Okay, so any windows we want to make in it, if you want to make a storefront window, that tends to be kind of nice because you can see easily all the little pieces of your interior you'll make. And even though we make our roofs on a hinge, it's kind of nice to have that view in, but you don't have to do it this way. If I want to make a window on this piece right here, and I want to find the center, this is how I do it. I go from corner to corner. There's my center. And from there, I can measure out whatever kind of a window I want. If I wanted to have a window right in the center, and maybe I mean, it's up to you how big you want to make something like that. Alright, now we don't have our box cutter here, so this is another advantage of having this sort of thin cereal box. And if I can just make a little tiny incision there, then I can get my window made. And I want to use, even though I have the supplies that are a little bit better, I want to use the stuff that you'll probably have access to, just so I can see all the troubleshooting you might have to do. So these are all materials that I've never particularly used before for this, but it won't be as neat and as crisp and clean as they might be when we make them with the materials at school, but it'll do. For any doors that you're making, remember back to our scale, you know, if our people were, but if we were doing 1/8 of an inch is equal to 1 foot, then around, you know, 7/8 of an inch would be as tall as a person is. So it'd be like a person would be that big if we were doing that scale. But like I said in the last video, we're not going to be too concerned with the scale during this. We're kind of finding the parts that we're going to sacrifice. If I wanted to make a double door, And go like that. Cut there. Cut there. And depending on how I wanted it to open, I would score on the opposite side. Oops. And you can experiment with all kinds of things, taking out little windows, scoring, and making shutters for windows, anything that you want to experiment around with. Now I might want to put some plastic wrap on this, or if I had something clear, like any kind of clear cellophane, but I'd want to do that after I've done my surface treatment. Now I'm going to have kind of a ragtag patchwork kind of a building, just like I did with my floors, so that we can see all the different things we can do. So I'm going to paint this one, and no, you know what, I'll paint this one and then I'll do some wallpaper on one of these windows. Okay, if you are painting, you're going to need to paint on both sides, because once the paint dries on one side, it'll totally warp up, especially when you're using something this thin. If I want to make a brick color, if I have this just acrylic paints, see, I want to make this more of a brownish red to make it a brick color, so remember, back to color theory, I'm going to put a little bit of the opposite. So I'm making a little bit of green, and I'm adding in, that's kind of purple looking, so I'm adding some yellow, and then a little bit of white. It's still a little too purple. So I'm adding a little bit more yellow until I get a brick color. It still looks a little bit purple. On the outside of these cereal boxes, you're still seeing, the brand, right? And we don't want that, so we might even have to paint it over with white. This thin kind of chipboard that they make for food packaging, the white is very opaque, so it's going to go over our lettering. So we might have to do that first as one coat. With using this kind of really thin chipboard of food packaging, we might be better off doing the method of doing the wallpaper. Is probably going to be a better idea than paint. But if you have paint, you can do this as well. I've never used something this thin for this project, so we're kind of finding out together what's going to happen. Once that dries, I can go over it a little bit more with my brick color. It just needed the white to cover it. I'm going to need that to dry before I paint on the other side. So it looks like we will be using a few coats here. So I'm going to let that dry before I paint on the other side, and then ultimately I can go back on this side and get it that brick color if I wanted it. For time's sake, we might not do that many coats so that I can get this filmed and edited for you. So we're going to let that dry. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have to, if we're going to use paint, you're going to have to paint it white on both sides to give it a first coat. Because I'm impatient and running out of time here, I was painting the other sides of it before allowing it to dry, but I found that when I painted it on corrugated cardboard and turned it upside down, I got this kind of almost a brick-like effect to begin with. So that's kind of a crazy opportunity. But definitely, if you are choosing to do your walls painted because you have access to paint, you're going to want to do a coat of white first on both sides before you add color to it. And if you don't have paint, you can do the wrapping paper method or collaging. I'm going to show you that next. Well, it looks like this actually worked pretty well as far as the paint, and that it actually gave it a little bit more stiffness to this really thin cardboard, but can still see some of the product stuff underneath, so it looks like we're going to need to do another coat. Okay, so I painted both sides of these, and I had to do a few coats of white paint before I put color onto it, and just kind of experimenting around with how thin this is, but it seems to still keep its shape pretty well, and the paint becomes its own kind of strengthening layer. Now what we're going to do is, if we want to put any windows on, we can do that. I'm going to use a plastic bag, which somehow disappeared here. But this did happen, which was kind of a cool effect when I was turning it over before it was dry. I was turning these over after I did the white coats, and it did kind of a cool sort of brick pattern in there, which is just the corrugation. Like it was almost like a rubbing that would happen because of the corrugation, so the paint just stayed on the upper places. So that's definitely something to work with too. And again, you could use cardboard like this and save yourself all the trouble of the warping and all of the extra layers of paint. But as you'll see when I try to score this, what ends up happening is that you do get, even when you get like kind of a crisp side, it does have this seam. So you could absolutely use this. It's much, much more sturdy if you'd like to. But it's going to be up to you, whatever you have around. You just will have this sort of you'll see the corrugations, as opposed to here where you don't. It's just the very, very thin chipboard. Okay, so you could do this with any kind of plastic that you have. Could use a Ziploc bag, or any plastic that was possibly being thrown away. Checking your recycling bin is a good place to find materials for this project. And what I'm doing is I'm just cutting it out, and we have thicker transparencies at school that we use, and we hot melt glue them on, but because we're at home and we're kind of making use of, and of course I didn't cut it big enough, because we're at home and using whatever we have around, I'm going to try it a different way. And again, the way that I show you how to do these things, you're not limited to these as materials. You know, whatever kind of works for you. But to do my window, I can spread this out, and I'm going to use tape instead of glue. If you have cellophane around the house too, you can tape or glue that on for a stained glass window effect. And if you made several, like a bunch of windows all cut in, I would just put one big piece over it and tape it around that wall side. And then I was saying that I would show you how to do wallpaper if you didn't have paint, and that's easy enough. I don't know what happened to my wrapping paper, but you could do all sorts of things. I have this old magazine that comes in the mail. I don't know why I don't subscribe to it, but there's this lady, and she's a pop star. Maybe you folks know her. Popular with the kids, but she's like totally wearing a scrunchie. Well, this pattern kind of matches and looks good with my floor, so I could use this. It could be collaging, or you could use wrapping paper, or you could use regular paper and, you know, make your own designs on it. And making wallpaper, seriously, is just as simple as this. Little trick if you don't even have scissors is making decal edges, but you do have a ruler or a straight edge. A decal edge is where you just pull up against your paper. So we can glue that right on. All different ways to work on our wall treatments. You could use little bamboo skewers or all kinds of like different like if you had any popsicle sticks for wainscoting, you know, the trim around. You could do really anything with this. Just, again, it might be redundant to say it, but just being creative, because this is basically made of all stuff we were going to throw away anyway. And then the last step is gluing it on. Okay, in the classroom we normally use hot melt glue for this. If you have hot melt glue and it's okay with the adults in your environment to use it, you can, but white glue will work just as well. Tape, duct tape, whatever you have to attach this together. And because we did this in pieces, I like to do it around the edges, but if it works better fitting it to be on top, you can do that. Just stay consistent with whatever you do. I obviously put the window in kind of the wrong place here, so that's okay. I put a little bamboo skewer to make the window in like 2 parts. So a lot of troubleshooting. If you're using white glue or hot melt glue, you want to make a seam of glue. Remember, more glue doesn't mean stickier. And I'm just going to start it with this because I'm sort of shaping it around. It's the right way. And then we can attach those pieces. If you are using hot melt glue, resist the urge to use your fingers to smooth things down. This is helpful to do this if you are using hot melt glue, to have a partner in doing it if there's someone around. But again, you know, I'm alone and I'm doing it. So the same thing with the white glue. You just want to, once you spread it on, you just want to hold it for a while. With hot glue, it's just you're waiting for it to dry. I'm trying to push this up against my leg. There. And whether you're using hot glue or white glue, you just want to go one step at a time. Sometimes taking a little piece of tape on either kind of glue and putting a little tiny bit of tape to hold on to it is something that you can do. After you glue everything on, if you find that because this doesn't have the stability that thicker cardboard does, that you have like a little space or it didn't make it all the way around like that, you can kind of troubleshoot with maybe taking another piece to make a little patch. So I could just put that on like so. Alright, so now we have our little building. Mine is pretty ragtag and all kinds of different colors, and showing you the different things you can do. If you have stamps, you could make patterns on the interior. You can collage the walls. If you don't have paint, that works with magazines or paper, or just really, I mean, glitter, anything in decorating those walls. Having our doors and windows. And now we're ready to start making the little things inside.